All right, so after sitting and thinking on this De'Aaron Fox deal a little bit more, I have definitely shifted my opinion from where it was earlier today as I recorded, yesterday as y'all saw that previous video initially on the trade. I think the Kings kind of fleeced. The Spurs kind of fleeced. And I think the Kings did okay, and the Bulls, not particularly impressed. I gotta be totally honest with y'all. It's not as bad of a trade by any means as the Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic for 31-year-old Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and 1 first-round pick. By any means, it's not nearly as bad of a trade, but it is not a great trade, I don't think, for either the Kings or the Bulls. And I think for the Spurs, it is an amazing trade. I think one of the better trades we've seen recently in terms of the amount they gave up for what they received and what that sets them up for in the future. So before we hop into it, I've mentioned this in a couple other videos, but yes, if y'all watch my 2K channel, yes, that channel got hacked. I don't know what's going to happen with it right now. It's been taken down. I might get it back. I might not. I'm doing everything in my power when I'm not making these videos to try to get that channel back. We'll see what happens, but when I have an update to share with y'all, I'll share it on Twitter. Twitter's in the description. Y'all can go follow over there if you want to know what's going to happen. And there's a chance this time turns into a 2K channel, maybe, because it's monetized. I'm being totally honest. We'll see, but that's not the point of the video. We're going to break down this trade even further. So point being, the Kings basically trade De'Aaron Fox for Zach LaVine, who is having a great year, and then 3 first-round picks, a 2025 Charlotte pick, a 27 San Antonio pick, and a 2031 Minnesota pick, and then 3 seconds as well, including a return of their own pick from Chicago. 2 of those picks, it looks like, came from Chicago. And then they get City Sissoko as well, who I don't think is a really important piece of the deal. The honest truth is, the 3 first-round picks is really 2. Because this 2025 Charlotte pick is lottery protected, it turns into 2 seconds if Charlotte does finish in the lottery, which obviously they're going to. They're terrible. So basically they got 5 second-round picks and then 2 first-round picks as well as LaVine for De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter as well. It's not horrible, right? But it's not great. I feel like when you have a franchise talent like a De'Aaron Fox, it's very reasonable to expect, especially with some of the precedents that's been set over these past few years with guys like Rudy Gobert and Mikal Bridges and Kevin Durant and players like that being traded for larger packages. And look, I know De'Aaron Fox isn't Kevin Durant, but he is at least beyond, in my opinion, the level of a Rudy Gobert or a Mikal Bridges. And only getting 2 first-round picks and 5 second-round picks for De'Aaron Fox as well as Zach LaVine is not great. And here's the honest truth. Zach LaVine, the contract isn't terrible in my opinion. I made a video last week defending him and basically saying I think he's an underrated player. But as is, the contract isn't great either. And more importantly than that, it puts the Kings in what I call basketball purgatory, which is where the Bulls have been for the past few years, in that if you look at their roster, they are not good enough to contend for anything. They don't have a real point guard, in all honesty, on the roster. Like, I look at this roster, I don't know who the point guard is, to be totally honest. Is it Keon Ellis? Like, is it LaVine playing the point guard position? Is it Malik Monk? Like, they don't have a point guard on this roster. Devin Carter, a rookie? There's just not that guy. And what they're going to have is Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis, almost in a lot of ways a recreation of the Bulls from the last couple of years. Sabonis is better than Vucevic, but still, this is a roster in a loaded Western Conference that is going to be the 11th or 12th best team in the conference, realistically. Not a team that I think has a serious path to contention for anything more than maybe at best squeaking into the play-in. And they didn't get a ton of draft assets to set them up super well in the future, but they're also not going to be bad enough in their own right with LaVine to effectively take. And so for the rest of this season, I feel like they're kind of screwed. And at some point, I mean, they add DeMar DeRozan as their big free agency acquisition. They now have LaVine long-term as well. The financials of those guys, like, you almost want to get rid of those guys. It's almost, I feel like, full rebuild time for Sacramento, but obviously as of right now, that's not the direction they're going because they have 3 high caliber players in LaVine, DeRozan, and Sabonis, but they're not going to be good. And I think everybody knows they're not going to be good. And so it's a baffling return because you didn't get the assets you could have in terms of draft picks because you didn't get those assets in favor of a guy who's going to keep you from being bad enough to truly rebuild. I think that's backwards. I don't like that move for the Kings the more that I think about it. And for the Bulls, I'll spend less time on this, but the only thing about the Bulls, they traded DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine for Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, returning their own first-round pick that they had traded away, as well as like 2 second-round picks. And maybe I'm missing a player, but nothing of real significant value for those 2 players. I mean, the Bulls did for once pick a direction. That's not something they've done ever. And I mean, I don't think they're done dealing. Like, I think Lonzo Ball could easily get dealt. I honestly think good chance Patrick Williams gets dealt. Vucevic, I feel like almost certainly gets dealt because he's just too good. He's going to prevent them from being bad. And I think there are teams out there that would be interested in Vucevic. So they picked a direction, but the return that they got for their players, I think, is disappointing at best. And I realistically do think that they're still not in position to have like an elite level of assets to be able to complete a real rebuild. And I don't know about the path for them becoming really competitive in the next few years. It seems like they have kind of failed as a front office in terms of effectively rebuilding. They should have done this a couple of years ago and they didn't, and it is backfiring, and it puts them in an unfortunate spot on their own right. And I think honestly, the more that I look at this trade for them, it's like, yeah, they kind of lost too. The Spurs, on the other hand, the fact that they managed to add De'Aaron Fox to Victor Wembanyama while maintaining control of Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, veterans like Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, other key role players like Keldon Johnson and Julian Champagnie, they didn't lose anybody. The only players they lost in their rotation were Trey Jones and Zach Collins, who basically aren't necessary because Zach Collins is easily replaced by Charles Bassey, and Trey Jones is obviously easily replaced by far by De'Aaron Fox. The Spurs got much better and did so in a way that doesn't handicap them financially as well. They have the flexibility still to make moves in the future with the mid-level exception this summer. They're still, I believe, under the first apron. Keldon Johnson is still a movable contract for sure. And as his contract continues, it will become even more movable as there are less years left on that deal. And it's not a horrible price tag at $19 million as well, despite him not being great. And they also are still set up for huge financial flexibility in the summer of 26-27 when a lot of superstar players are projected to be available for trade. So obviously or for signing, I should say. They would love to re-sign De'Aaron Fox, and I think that is going to be a priority for sure. But they have so much financial flexibility and were able to make this deal while still maintaining like 6 tradable picks. They have the entire core pretty much. I mean, they fleeced. The Spurs did an incredible job in this trade. They're going to be noticeably better as a team right now. They're going to be noticeably better as a team for the future, and they still have a ton of assets and a ton of flexibility to continue to improve the team at this trade deadline, next year, in the offseason, in free agency, however they want to. They have the flexibility to make a lot of different moves to continue to build a contender around Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, and I think they did an amazing job, in all honesty, deserve a lot of credit for what they did in this trade, because at the end of the day, like, the Kings and Bulls didn't horribly, awfully lose the trade, but they certainly got fleeced. And the Spurs getting De'Aaron Fox for what they did, literally giving up no key rotation players and just basically 2 first-round picks in a second. Phenomenal job by the Spurs. I mean, I'm so impressed by their front office. They are positioned to contend for a long time, and they are building a very, very formidable roster while maintaining a lot of flexibility. I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Be back with more NBA content very, very soon, and I appreciate y'all. Peace.